Today we're going to get really artsy and paint with texture, metal, and metaphor. Let's get started. Alright, to make those birds, I'm using bismuth. I poured it into this plaster of Paris mold, but I left too much moisture in there and it exploded everywhere. Instead, I'm going to pour it onto this sheet of aluminum, and then when it cools enough and starts forming crystals, I pour off the extra. I'll use that extra later to make a second sheet. Now, since I didn't have as much as the first sheet, it actually is more of a rainbow look. It's a bit more brittle and kind of hard to work with. So, to cut out the birds, I'm cutting around a template using a soldering iron. I set the soldering iron almost to its highest temperature. The one thing you have to be very careful with here is letting it sit for too long on the metal because you'll end up melting more than you intended. Instead of canvas, I'm painting on this furniture grade plywood. These are end cuts for $7 a board that I found at the local big box store, and just sealing them with some gesso on the front and sides. All right, the background is going to be yellow that fades to white. Since I want a lot of texture, I'm using this small brush, probably way too small for this size of board, so this took forever, so I'll speed things up for you. When I looked at this, it was way too dark, so I'm coming back in with pure white and just going over same direction. And now I'm using this 3-inch paintbrush on an extreme angle, so greater than 45 degrees, to blend all of these colors together. So first going horizontally, vertically, and then finally the original diagonal, and that will leave a bit of a texture in the paint as well. To make the cage, I'm using copper wire. I just stripped off the insulation, clamped it into the vise, and then put it into the drill, gave it a little bit of a gentle turn, and that gives it a smooth twist. Now, to put the cage together, I started using my ancient soldering skills, but that didn't quite work. There's way too much mass to use a soldering iron. I was able to kind of tack everything in place, but then that was it. So what I ended up doing was using another piece of copper wire just to kind of hold everything in place. Then once I got that all in place, I brought out the torch and some silver solder and used my plumbing skills to solder this all up. Now, the cool thing about the little copper wire that I used to hold everything together is that it comes right out. So I was able to start clipping it out, and there was nothing really left of it. All right, once that's all put together, I'm just placing it onto the painting and then just marking where I want the background to go, and then painting in what will be the back side of the cage. I started off with just a dark gray with this, but ended up going over it with more of a copper color later. I just don't show that, but you don't really see it. It just kind of makes this dark gray a little bit more golden colored. Okay, the vine is dark brown, so it's kind of a burnt umber with a tinge of black in it. I don't know if it made it that much darker, but it felt right, so I went with it. Okay. Later you'll see that I added a highlight to the vine. Now, originally I started off with a gray, but that didn't look right, and really your highlights really are the same color generally, or white, depending on how sharp that highlight is. So I went back in with a really light brown over the gray, and it looked a lot better. I'm filling them in with a light green, and then I'll come back later, and as you'll see in a minute, I fill in half of each leaf with a darker green. Now, I probably don't need to show you how to paint every single leaf in, but what I'm trying to show you here is that I paint really heavy, so just really super loaded up brush, and that heavy paint allows you to kind of cut in those textures later. Once I have all that dark green in there, I'll come back with an empty fine point brush and then drag it from one side of the leaf to the other to make the vein lines. You'll see what that looks like after I show you the painting at the end of the video. The flowers are really just kind of rounded triangles. So you round all the three sides and then add a small kind of shallow dome to the top. I'm also doing the same thing with the flowers that I did with the leaves, just starting with a light red as the kind of outline and then part of the back, and then filling in with a dark kind of a burgundy color. And that will give the suggestion of kind of the two sides of a leaf. If you ever look at a rose, oftentimes one side of the leaf will be a lighter color than the outside, for example. And that's the suggestion that I'm going for here. To attach the birds, I'm trying a different adhesive, so I discovered that laying it down on the bench means I don't have to hold it for half an hour, and that's what you're seeing here. And then the same thing with the bird cage, I glued that on with the same adhesive. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this video. So the painting was inspired by laying in bed one night, trying to purge some worry and negative thoughts from my brain by holding on to some happier ideas and thoughts and thinking a little bit more clearly. Now, I'm really happy with the piece. Not only does it look the way I want, but it also, I feel, conveys that story and the metaphors I was trying to get across. So you'll see that in not only the texture of the birds and the colors and all of that, but the texture in the leaves, and the line work is a little bit wonky. There's a little bit of bleed in the colors on a lot of the edges of the leaves. It doesn't necessarily look real. It's like a lot of negative worry and all of that fake. Now, your metaphors and your interpretation of this piece will vary, and I would love to hear what you have to say. So if you'd like to leave a comment and tell me how you interpret this piece, I would love to see that, and I will definitely respond. Anyway, I hope to see you in my next video, and I will talk to you later. Without further ado, here's the painting.